the best thing we can do is to have our wishes known.
Right.
Let our kids know what to do.
Yeah.
Saying goodbye to a parent is hard. Saying goodbye to anyone you love is hard. And if you're the decision maker for that person who is unable to make those decisions, it's next to impossible unless you know what that person wanted.
Over 50 million Americans are dealing with something on their own. It's causing them anxiety, it's causing them depression, it's even causing them to feel less than human. I'm talking about caregiving. This is something that affects so many people, and we're afraid to talk about it. And so today, we are going to open up the doors to this conversation, one that we all should be having. We shouldn't be embarrassed about it. We shouldn't be ashamed about it. We should help each other on the way. And today, we begin that journey. And so I want to welcome you to the Faith and Real Life podcast. My name is Greg Wasinski, and I'm joined today by a very good friend of mine, somebody that not only that I admire, but I trust with the information that she shares, the work that she's done, and especially in this area of caregiving, what it means for families, what it means for individuals. And so today I introduce you to my friend Margaret Jane Vogel.
I am Margaret Jane.
I want to call you Margaret Jane.
Thank you.
That's how I originally knew you. Like in my phone for so many years, you were Margaret Jane Vogel.
That's beautiful. That dovetails so well into today. You may not know this, but I am named after my great-grandmother.
That's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like she was Margaret Jane?
She was Margaret Jane. And the reason why I am Margaret Jane is because I come from a long line of Irish Margarets. And so I, as a child, my family name was Margaret Jane. Everyone called me Margaret Jane because there was Peggy, there was my grandma who was Margaret, and we've got Megs, and I was Margaret Jane because my mom wanted everyone to know that I was named after Grandma Rogan, that was the Margaret. That's my namesake.
I love that.
Yeah. Isn't it?
So this is something that we don't talk about enough. Like, sometimes we forget about traditions in this world of technology and in the world of future thinking and thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. We dismiss the ancestry, right? We might go into ancestry.com and look for people that lived like 400 years ago and see if we're related to royalty or what our 23andMe, results tell us. But we forget to simply look back at the people that paved the way. Just a generation or two ago, that some are immigrants, some grew up in the United States, but they taught our families how to be.
Right.
And so I love that you have that name, and I love that over a decade ago that we had a chance to meet in ministry, but it's carried you into so many different fields, and certainly this one of caregiving that you become so passionate about that even I see myself now having to deal with it in my own family, not that we're actively in that situation, but starting to think about what am I going to do. And all of our friends are starting to deal with it. We're at that age where that people are dealing with not only their parents or grandparents, but they're also dealing with their own children.
Right.
And so they're trying to caregive for two different sets of generations. So there's so much that we can talk about on this. And I know that if you're watching today that you might have questions. Certainly you can always email us those questions at info@faithandreallife.com. So you can go ahead and email us there if you have a question about caregiving. But certainly we hope that this conversation just opens you up to understanding that you're not alone. There is always hope, and that there are pathways in order to make this job of caregiving easier.
Lighter.
Yeah.
Lighter.
I guess that would be nothing in life worthwhile is easy.
Exactly.
And this would be one of these cases. And I think that when it comes to family matters, people feel ashamed
Yep.
because they think they're the only one that it's happening to.
Yep.
Like, I should be more grateful for my parents, so why am I so burnt out? And that makes me someone who isn't loving them enough.
And for parents' side of it, first of all, I'd say I think we're all actively caregiving and care receiving our whole lives long.
Truth.
So I think when we say, like, are we actively caregiving, we need to step back from that, because if we can set up our mindsets from the beginning of that, to be human is to require care and to give care.
Yeah.
You know, that there's a side of us that's always nurturing to others, and there's another side of us that needs to be nurtured. And so it's a feedback loop the whole time. And what happens as the folks around us age is those feedback loops shift. And that's not just my parents' age, but I have a 4-year-old grandson. Like, as he ages, that feedback loop, what he needs from me is different than what he needed from me when he was 2.
Right.
And so if we kind of start, I think part of releasing ourselves from from shame of age-related need, advanced aging needs, we have to start freeing ourselves earlier and saying, you know, we've always been designed to be in relationship.
Well, that's what I was going to say, like perspective. When we care for a child, we just figure it's what we do, and it's with joy, and it's watching them grow, and they enter into new phases, and we feel like we're helping them grow into the person that they're called to be. And in my time with you, and even in researching this, and this is so important that I actually have notes in front of me, which never, ever happens if you've ever seen one of my podcasts. But I think that there's beauty in helping somebody that is of an upper age, however we say that, in a senior realm, becoming the person that God created them to be in this phase.
Right.
Right.
And to have dignity about it.
And Mr. Rogers, I'm going to cut you off just for one second. Mr. Rogers had a quote in one of his books, and I love that he said that you are all the ages that you have ever been. And so when we get to caregiving with someone, it's not that they're just 80 years old. Correct. That is not the sum of who they are. They are year 1, year 2, year 3, every way up to 80, right? And there is beauty in that, and there's dignity in that, and humanity in that, and something to be celebrated with that person.
Yep.
So I'm watching The Pit the other day, which is my new favorite guilty pleasure. And there was a situation where a parent was transitioning. They were dying. And the kids did not have faith. And so he said, well, if you don't have religion, let me tell you about an old, I think he said it was a Hawaiian ritual or something whatever they use.
Something they say on TV. Yes.
Yeah, something they say on TV, and everybody goes, ooh, that's real. But it's not. Look it up.
Yeah.
But he said there's 4 things that you need to say. I love you, thank you, I forgive you, and will you please forgive me? And I think that in my world, like, it isn't just about death. But I thought, how many people do we need to say that to when we don't know what to say? And then if we are faith-filled, how can we still say those same things, but utilize our relationship with God in the process? So I don't even know if I got that right, but that's what I saw on the television show. So that's
well,
what they
and
say.
There's a book that was written a long time ago. A mutual friend of ours recommended it to me. It's called The 5 Things That Matter Most. Okay. And it's those 5 questions are in that book. And it came from the author of the book.
I only gave 4. What's the last one?
The 5th one is goodbye. Yeah. And it came from hospice care, but the book really encourages us to just live our lives that way. And I was so grateful for that book. I was told about that book years before anyone in my mother-in-law or father-in-law or my own parents had started to get older. And so I was able to actually share those questions and my father-in-law had a massive heart attack, and so he wasn't conscious when I had that conversation with him. But my mother-in-law, she had had a stroke, And she had what's called aphasia, where she could understand what was being said, but she couldn't speak back. And so we were able to have that conversation together. And they don't have to be long. They don't have to and with my father-in-law, he knew that he had cancer. My mother-in-law's husband, who's like a second father-in-law, he had a terminal diagnosis. And so we had some time with him where he was lucid and awake, and we were able to have those conversations with him. And again, you can't start living those questions early enough.
Right.
I think that's really the key to caregiving is like, don't just live those questions now.
Yeah. Well, you talked about at the beginning, like we've been caregiving our whole life. Like there's a cycle to this. There's this general cycle, a linear cycle that happens all throughout us caregiving for others, basically. Talk a little bit about that, just so that people understand just how we move when we start out just from helping people to really being an intensive caregiver.
Let me begin just by saying we get our scripts around needs, care. We get those scripts early from our families. Like we've talked about this a lot. You know, one of my earliest scripts is there's an iconic picture in my mind of my great grandmother, Margaret Jane, who I'm named
Margaret
after.
Jane.
So by the time I was born, I'm on the younger side of the grandkids. I'm like the second to the youngest cousin on my mom's side. So everyone was pretty old when I came around, and my great grandma.
We won't tell them.
Yeah, well, they know. My great grandma was the only living great grandparent I had, and then my grandma Flanagan was young. She was only in maybe her late 40s, early 50s by the time I came along, but she was my only living grandparent. My parents lost their parents pretty early. So there is this iconic family photo of by the time I'm born. I was maybe a year old when great grandma Rogan died, but since she was in a nursing home when I was born. And there's a picture of me, like little 1-year-old Margaret Jane, my grandma, and then my great grandmother. And in the picture, my grandmother is feeding my great grandmother her birthday cake.
Oh.
And that's an iconic image for me. It's what family caregiving looked like.
Right.
And that's caregiving done right. Everyone's around. In my mind, that's caregiving done right.
We have a picture of what we think it's going to look like, what we can handle, what we will do when we get to that situation, but we never know. And I would say mine, we talked a little bit about this before we started, and I kind of panicked because I was like, do I have one? You know, right? And I know that I have many. But the one that really came to mind is that as I was a young adult, my parents got divorced. And so my mom stayed in the house, but my dad left. And the big thing is that my grandfather, my dad's dad, was living with my parents because he needed a caregiver.
Wow.
So even though my dad was gone and my parents got divorced, my mother continued to take care of her father-in-law.
Wow.
For years.
Yeah.
And like, to me, that's the servant's heart of saying, I mean, it's not the way that somebody thinks, but it's, some people might say it's not my problem.
Right.
Right? Like, this is your dad, you deal with it. But it wasn't. It was dignity, love, Christ-like, beautiful caregiving. Not always perfect.
Right.
Right? But beautiful.
And behind each of those family stories, or like for me, that iconic picture, because I don't remember that time. You know, you remember this time of your mom and your grandpa and all that. But what the picture doesn't show you is the layers behind that, right? Like, how did that family decide that Margaret Jane was going to go to a nursing home? How did that family decide? It's all, and then we start to see, like, I think we see these iconic ideas of caregiving, whether we learn them from movies or a family script, and we think it needs to be one way.
Right.
and we forget that there's an underbelly to everything. And so when we're living out these moments and we're living out these transitions, that's where we can feel shame, because we're like, oh, but look at great, like grandma did it so easy.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
In that picture, she looks like there was never an issue.
there was
and this
never,
is the greatest
right.
thing.
Like yeah. And that's not the way life is lived. And so,
And to me, I think that some of that is just a societal label. Years ago, coming from an old Polish family, you took care of all your ancestors. There wasn't even a question, right? We live in a different time. We have access to different medicine. We know when somebody is better off outside of the home, and we'll kind of talk about some of those questions, how we get there. But at some point, it's safer and healthier for somebody to be in a 24-hour care facility where they can get what they need for quality of life. And maybe that's something we didn't understand years ago, because in my world, nobody goes to a home. Like, you don't send me, like, that was, I can remember, like, ancestors saying, like, don't you send me to no home. Like,
right.
you know, like,
Yeah.
And I think about it, I tell my kids, don't you send me to no home. You know, but if the time was right,
Yeah.
and I was going to be harmed, or I was going to harm them in some way, those are the things that we need, you know, to openly talk about.
Exactly. And that's let's talk about them early. Let's try to talk about them early before the crisis hits.
Yeah. So where do we start as an individual?
You had asked me about the stages of caregiving and to talk a little bit about like helping and where do we go from there. So in my research, I found that there's stages of caregiving, and honestly, oftentimes it's nonlinear. So we can kind of we can step up a little on the ladder, then we can step back on the ladder, then we can step up on the ladder, and we can step back on the ladder. The other thing I'll just say too is I'm going to talk intentionally right now about caregiving as we get older and receiving care from loved ones as we get older. I feel like one of the distinctions for me as I became in parenting, when we're parenting our kids, it's a little different too, because our kids go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, right? And there's, like, you could look at the pediatrician's website, the CDC. They are going to have at 1 year old, your baby should be doing this.
Yeah, they have charts for all
They have charts for it. But when we become adults, all of that is out the window, right? Like, my mother-in-law had her first stroke at 40. You know, you never know.
Right.
There's not the same kind of, okay, you know, when you're 60, you can expect this. When you're 65, you can expect that. It's all over the place.
Right.
So let's just first talk about the stages of caregiving. And
you have a great chart. We'll put that up for the viewers to see, because I want them to see this.
Great. So helping, it goes from helping to involved to intensive to all-encompassing to closing. So, and it's important. I like this chart because a few different things can happen. Let's talk about like when someone just starts to need some help. Okay. And we'll talk about when we start to need some help. So we can start to notice that we need help. I'm going to put it in the first person instead of throwing my mom and dad under the bus.
Yeah, right.
You know, I do stand up too. So I throw them under the bus a lot in that. So I'll try to keep them out of this. So I will
you either
speak
talk
for
about
myself.
bathroom issues or parents. That's
Exactly.
usually
That's
stand-up
how
starts.
it goes,
Yeah.
right? So relatable. So anyway, let's talk about myself. So I may start to notice, I'm 53 right now, I may start to notice in the years ahead that maybe my knees start to hurt. And I can't get up and down the stairs the way I used to. Or my laundry room right now is in the basement of my house, you know, so I could see if I'm going to live in that house, if I'm going to stay in that house, I may someday need help just getting my buckets of laundry from the second floor to the bottom floor.
Truth.
I can still do all the wash myself. I can fold my clothes and all that, but I may start to need some help. So that's very light helping, right?
Yeah.
But it is the beginning of a caregiving relationship.
Yeah.
And I want to say, like, it's then the needs of helping kind of increase. Maybe I need help once a month on the big stuff. Maybe I start to need help once a week on the little stuff. Maybe then, but helping, when we're saying helping, the early signs of helping is really those things that by and large a person can manage their day-to-day affairs, and they may need timely interventions.
Yeah, so,
little help here and there.
And somebody might be listening thinking like, oh yeah, I used to be able to do all the yard work in my house, but I can't pick up the rocks anymore that I used to and move them. And so I call my kids to come help me with this.
Right. Or in the wintertime, someone has to shovel my driveway now. I'm done shoveling my driveway.
And that could be an injury. It could be aging. I mean, like you said, you don't know when it's going to happen. And it's a word of decline, right? Certain things break down. And it could be a football player who played their whole life and now their body doesn't react at 35 the same way that it would for you or I. So, so I think that, number one, we recognize that there is an active need for help in a situation. Mm-hmm. And it's probably on us because most people aren't noticing what we need help with at that point.
And we can fake it for a long time, right?
Yeah, I do.
And I'm 53 and I already fake it sometimes. Yeah. So we have to think like in terms of, we may need help physically, we may need help mentally, we may need help, emotionally. Mm-hmm. Those may be the ways that we're starting to notice that we need some help. Now the next stage is involved. So involved is going to be more like, okay, and this has happened with my mom and dad in the recent past, is, like, it's not just the involved can be, I'm going to sit in on a doctor's appointment. Okay. I've had family members who parents have had dementia, and they're starting to notice those early signs. They're like, okay, Mom, now it's time for me. I need to go to the doctor with you because
so I can hear it first.
I can hear information. We can think, or sometimes the involvement can start to happen around finances. We can start to notice that our moms or dads aren't able to keep track of the bills the way they used to. Okay. Maybe we're going over there and we're seeing like boxes from QVC and I already have a lot of Amazon boxes, so it's going to be very hard for my kids to know when to intervene.
They don't know which one.
But there can be those signs where like, or start getting the scam calls, things like that. We need to be more involved. We need to start going to appointments with them instead of kind of the incidental, I'm going to help you out when you need this. It's not that just in time helping, but it's more like we are going to set a routine because I know you are going to need help setting up your medicines.
Well, let me ask you this question because this keeps coming back to mind as you're talking. Why do so many families avoid the honest conversations about their parents' decline? Like, I know families that they just don't want to talk about it.
Well, it's tough, right? Yeah. So,
because it's truth. We have to admit that our parents are getting older.
It's true. It can be truth. It can also be perception.
Yeah.
It can be, again, around those iconic images of what we expected. If I'm the person who's aging, I had my iconic image of what my 70s were going to be like. So don't come tell me that it's different, right?
So they're afraid of a friction between them and their parents.
And also those, let's be honest, like our relationships with our parents and our siblings, those are primal.
Yeah.
I mean, we oftentimes you have to do a lot of work to be able to talk about the matter at hand without then saying, and when we were 16, you took my sweater and you wore it and I needed it and you stretched it out and you spilled things on it.
Some people have an easier time helping their neighbor than they do their parent or a sibling.
And there's really not wrong. I think part of it too is like, name it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And it's not disrespectful. I think that, that there's a point that you treat your elders with respect, you watch from a distance. A lot of times in the generation that's now coming into young adulthood and moving through that, they don't want to get involved, right? They don't want to be involved in the problems. That's your business. I'm not going to get involved. So once I do, number one, I have to acknowledge that I'm now implemented into this. I'm part of the whole deal. But number two, I guess in a way that you're not who you once were.
Correct.
But that's Absolutely. A fact. That's just a reality. There's nothing.
Right. But it's control too, Greg.
Well,
right?
no, exactly. But it's, and I guess why I say that is that we just have to accept that there is what is.
Right.
And it could be crappy. It could suck. But it just what is. And if we close our eyes and we don't deal with it, it's still going to be exactly the same.
Exactly.
Except potentially something bad could happen by ignoring it.
Now, more than ever, we need to pause and take time away to reconnect with what's most important. The Trilogy Retreat property is a unique bed and breakfast style retreat experience for those who have never been on retreat before or anyone who regularly takes advantage of retreat opportunities. This private 24-acre property is a special place, allowing you to slip away from the rest of the world and discover God in the way your soul needs. Whether your stay is in an individual room or the privacy of our guest cottage, you'll have full access to an array of amenities. Trilogy offers retreat experiences for individuals, couples, families, and organizations to grow in their faith. During your time away, take advantage of fishing the 2-acre lake, walk the reflection trail through the woods, or spend time by the fire. Found in the heart of Southington, Ohio, the Trilogy Retreat property is easily located between Cleveland and Youngstown. To discover all Trilogy has to offer, visit our website, trilogy.center. No matter what your reason for visiting, the staff at Trilogy is ready to help you write the rest of your story.
So many things are coming to mind. As you're talking, one of the things that's coming to mind for me is we have to balance what we can control.
Correct.
So when you are in relationship with someone and you begin to see their needs, I will only be able to control my side of the street. I will only be able to control here.
Yeah.
And I mean, unless the person, needs guardianship or something like that, where there's actually they're no longer able to make their decisions. I think one of the hardest things we can do as children is to respect the decisions that our parents are making.
Yeah.
That can be hard. It's
in their own individual nature and what they deserve to have.
Right. And I feel really blessed to be the daughter of Bill and Hannah, because my mom was the primary caregiver among her siblings of my grandmother.
Okay.
And now we have this, history of Margaret Jane being being taken care of. And now Margaret is being taken care of by Hannah, and Hannah is taken care of. And she had a good, not always easy with conversations with her siblings, but they had a good, respectful way to disagree with one another, and also I would say my grandma Flanagan was a very insightful mom. And she was like, I'm going to try to make it easy on my kids, you know? So when they said, Mom, you can't live on your own anymore, she was sad and she was like, ooh, are you sure? But she was like, okay, you're right. So I think my grandma was pretty in tune and sensitive with her kids, which was nice. But we joke in my family because being Bill and Hannah's daughter means that I have 4 sisters. So being one of their daughters means that that mom and dad always have an envelope of death. In terms of this, you don't talk about stuff.
What is an envelope of death?
That was not my family. Oops, sorry. That was not my family. We talked about it. I can remember growing up and being...
What is the envelope of death?
The envelope of death is that my mom and dad had an envelope of death. And when I was a child, my Uncle John held their envelope of death.
This is like all details.
It is
and
details.
passwords
It's their will. It's who gets guardianship of the kids. Here's where our bank accounts are. Da 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 da. It was
Okay.
sealed. It was sealed. It had envelope of death on the front of it. It was lick sealed, and then they signed the back of it. Like that's that old-fashioned way to tell if someone has gone into your mail.
Yeah.
So you can tell it's always been sealed, right? So growing up,
Wait a second. I love this idea. Okay,
Go
so
for
I
it.
think everybody should do this because I've seen people that have lost a loved one where none of this stuff existed.
yeah,
And I want to do this, right? So I'm going to do this. But
Yeah.
I just want to change the name. Envelope of Death is just, we could enhance that
you
maybe a
can
little bit.
enhance
Like,
it. And they have like books that you can buy on Amazon.
yeah,
you know,
I'm just going with a
advanced
simple
planning, whatever.
envelope.
Like,
I'm going to even buy the old envelope with the little string that you do that, and I'll sign
yeah,
that.
but you have to lick it, and then you have to sign the top
Sign
of it
it.
so you know if it hasn't been
I
opened.
have a wax seal.
That's even
I have
better.
a wax seal.
That's even
Yeah,
better.
I like
yeah.
that. All right, so the envelope of
growing
death.
up-
The envelope of death
Growing
existed.
up, I knew that Uncle John had the envelope of death because should something happen, should there be an untimely demise of both my parents, Uncle John was in charge.
and you don't necessarily go to your godparents.
No, exactly. But I would go live with Uncle John. And if something happened to his kids, they'd come live with us. Anyway, it was just between my mother and her siblings, everybody knew who had their envelope of death and a basic plan of what would happen.
So do you have an envelope of death?
I have an envelope of death. And my kids know that we have an envelope of death. And just a year ago, so we're 53 now and we're starting to think about like our next chapter, you know. So Jerry and I decided to sit down we have 2 children and they each have partners, they each are married. And so we decided to sit down with our adult children and their spouses.
Yeah, you had like
and
a giant round table.
We did. And now with my mom and dad and that generation, it was sealed and it was signed and you knew something, you knew there was a plan, but
It was
you
like
didn't
the
necessarily
7th seal in
need
the
it.
Bible. Do not break
Don't
the
open
seal.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with our kids, we decided that we were just going to be more transparent
Transparent.
about it because of what Jerry went through with the passing of his mom and dad, who were also very organized. They didn't have an envelope of death, but they each had like a drawer.
Yeah.
You know, like, just go look there when you need something.
The envelope of death is growing on me, though.
I
As you
know,
say it
you're
more,
gonna love it.
I
know.
may not change the name.
Don't do it. Don't
No.
do it. Because it makes it funny then, too.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
the envelope. Yeah.
But we actually sat down with our kids and we were like, okay, these are kind of our hopes. We're hoping, you know, maybe we'll stay in the house. And I know we're 53 and we're young to have these. Some people would say we're young to have these conversations.
I don't
But
think so.
I wanted my kids to have a roadmap. It really was a blessing. My mom's family in particular, like they had a roadmap for how to do things.
Yeah.
And I want my kids to have that.
I mean, we go on ladders, we drive cars, like accidents can happen. And not even necessarily death, but the involvement that would then be needed, that if something happened to us, that our wishes are at least written down somewhere, or somebody knows how to get into the bank accounts for signership and
Right.
all that stuff.
And another reason why Jerry and I decided to do it early is because neither of us grew up with a great amount of financial literacy.
Mm-hmm.
So my family on both sides are immigrants. Like my parents were like owning a home was a big deal. Like if you look at like most of my ancestry, we all lived in like intergenerational housing, and I'm a huge fan of it. I'm not a fan of the nuclear family. I think we should all just live in a commune anyway, but that's beside the point. My kids won't go for it.
I don't
though.
disagree.
My kids won't go for it. They're like, nope. Anyway, but financial literacy. So Jerry and I decided to do it early because neither one of us inherited great financial literacy from our families. And when you think about but our families were both wildly responsible with their finances, but we didn't talk about it.
Right.
And I wanted our kids. I guess I've always in my adulthood, like, we're 53. We're thinking about the retirement years. Well, how much is enough to retire?
Right.
What do you need? And, no one really talks about, we talk about money all the time, but we don't talk about like the finances, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, and if you look at Instagram or something, you see an ad, it's like is $2.5 million enough to retire?
Right.
And people are like, what?
Yeah.
I'm going to be working at McDonald's till I'm 90.
Right. And, or like, yeah. And so thinking about what, and the hard thing is like when you start getting into these advanced caregiving years, money is important.
Yeah.
No, not have like whether you have it or don't have it. Things are always easier if you have resources. That's
Sure.
the way our system is built, and that's sad. But you can't. There comes a time in the caregiving relationship where you do have to be very transparent about those finances,
Right.
because then it is like, okay, do we have the resources to hire help? Do we have the resources to qualify for programs? Do we have the resources to get enrolled on insurance? Do we qualify for things? What benefits do we have? What benefits maybe, maybe your parent is a veteran, but are they accessing those benefits? So these financial conversations, if the caregiving is long enough and extended enough, those things are going to start to come up. Or if it's intensive enough.
So would you say that in this explanation that the sooner we start to have these conversations as a family, the easier the transition will start to become, because there is an expectation that it could go this way. Maybe you don't end up needing that care or the envelope of death, but it's there if it's needed, because I've seen it play out the other way. And
Preach.
It's a shit show. That's the easiest way that I can say that it becomes a real mess for somebody who doesn't know where to look, who can't get access to life insurance policies. And maybe one of the spouses is living, but the kids have taken over, but they can't get the care for the other parent because the one who died had access to everything, even over their spouse. So
Right.
like I've seen that play out, and talk about adding stress on top of stress. This what people are experiencing when they start to move from that next stage from involvement and just being aware and involved on I would say maybe a ground level, that if they can't handle that, then they're certainly going to struggle getting into the different stages of helping someone. And
Right.
so I do think that the more we have this conversation earlier on, and everybody has to do it in their family the way that they're comfortable.
I would say a couple of things. Like, one, know your family.
Yeah.
And in some families, it's not possible.
Yeah. Somebody told me the story the other day about two siblings trying to make decisions where one wanted the parent to go because they wanted the inheritance, and the other one was trying to provide the best care possible. And so, like, a conversation like this in that household, everybody has to, do everything. Like, we're not telling you to go out and do all this stuff. You have to assess the way that you're most comfortable and that makes sense in your own house.
I think one of the best things the scenario you mentioned was the two siblings. And it's hard for me to imagine that it's about money or it's about living.
Right.
Unpacking those things, that's their own work to do. That's hard for me to imagine that those were the postures of either of the people. But either way, the best thing we can do is to have our wishes known.
Right.
Let our kids know what to do.
Yeah.
Saying goodbye to a parent is hard. Saying goodbye to anyone you love is hard. And if you're the decision maker for that person who is unable to make those decisions, it's next to impossible unless you know what that person wanted.
Well, and it reverses itself though too, because as a child, you have to be willing to listen. Like, make sure that you know the information. Don't shy away from the conversation and just take it as a logistical conversation. Take the emotion out of it and say, okay, I'm just learning where all the accounts are. I'm learning what the passwords are. I'm learning what you want if something happens. I have all that information now. And I think some people shy away from that end too. It's not just about talking to the parent, but it's actually about listening to what your parents want. That becomes just as important.
And that's where it becomes like, this is the side of the house that I control. This is the side of the street that I control, because it can look like, you've got a family member who maybe, like, my mom has congestive heart failure. And so salt is bad for her.
Okay.
Salt is bad for her. But I can't say, how much salt are you having?
Yeah, right.
There comes a time where she's going to make her decisions based on her quality of life. She's 86 years old. If
You've
she
earned
wants
that right.
popcorn with some salt on it, I really can't, go in and take all the salt out of their house.
She's of
right?
sound mind. She knows what the consequences are, and she has to live her own life.
Correct. I think where it can become really difficult is driving. Driving can be one of those like places where the kids sometimes have to say, I got to come in and take those keys, right? Like that's a tricky one.
So does that go beyond involvement then?
Yes.
Is that a next phase?
So it can be involved. It can be part of involved. So let's talk. So we've got helping, which is just like the incidental, hey, this is heavy, or can you shovel my drive? I don't do the snow anymore.
Yeah.
Involved is going to be a little bit more like, hey, let me know who your doctors are. Let me know where your envelope of death is. I don't need the contents yet, but I'd like to know, like, where is it at?
I'm keeping the name, by the way, I decided.
Perfect. Please do. And
Envelope
trademark
of
it, Hannah and Bill.
Envelopeofdeath.com.
So
That's not a real thing.
See,
Don't go there.
I can't get this because you keep going back. This is why I can't get through this chart.
All right. So
helping involved is, let me know who your doctors are. Maybe at that point, depending if they've got like some health challenges, going to doctor's appointments with them, or that might be a time, in your My Chart, you can share access to your chart.
Yeah.
So it might be a time that you share it with one or more of your children, or at least that decision maker. If you have the stroke, who's going to make the decision? They should probably be on your My Chart.
Yeah.
Then intensive is going to be, okay.
So stage 3 is the intensive.
Stage 3 is intensive, and that can look like, okay, we need to make sure that someone stops by mom and dad's house every day. We need to, and it's going to depend on what triggered it. So we'll talk about that in a minute.
This is like another level of involvement.
It's yes. And basically, if you think about helping is me as caregiver, I'm going to think about sorry, I keep doing that. I'm going to think about it in just as me as caregiver. Okay, so me as caregiver, helping looks like I'm aware and I pitch in, but 99% of my life is going on as it did.
Yeah.
Involved is going to be like, oh, I need to put it on my to-do list to think about this. It's becoming more a part of my routine. It's becoming more of something that I need to notice and pay attention to, and I need to get more intentional about it.
Okay.
Involved is going to be, there are probably parts of my life that I may need to dial back on in order to be present to this need, right?
Okay.
And then all-encompassing is sometimes in hospice, all-encompassing can be sometimes, depending on what has triggered the caregiving in the first place, all-encompassing can be like, final stages, we're going to be at the bedside all the time, or a family making that decision of, okay, mom or dad or aunt or uncle, they have caregiving needs they need something round the clock. Mm-hmm. That's all encompassing. Yeah. So as a family, are we able to provide that? That's oftentimes when you start getting into those conversations about a facility or hiring home health, those things.
Yeah.
And then closing is when we say goodbye.
Yeah.
And
or
let me say this, closing is when we say goodbye because someone has passed, or closing can be that stage of crisis is resolved And now mom and dad are back in their own house.
Right. Maybe somebody had a fall.
Maybe
and they're in
they had a
body
fall.
cast.
Maybe they had a stroke, but they recovered. So closing isn't always,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
at the graveside. Closing can also be like, okay, this situation, this crisis has resolved, and now everything's back to normal.
So how do we get to the point where we begin to understand that our parents aren't able to do it themselves anymore in their own place, right? Because this becomes the other level, that when it's all encompassing, you've been involved, you're doing everything that you can. How does it get to a point, though, that we start to have this conversation that I love you, I know it's your house, I know that you're here, but you're by yourself, this is not safe.
Yeah.
I know that you and I have talked about this before, about how do you begin to have that conversation, but I think people need to hear that because they've accepted that there's going to be a time when they need to be involved, but they're not prepared for that level.
Right. I am a huge let's normalize the process person. And one of the things that helps me normalize a process is a checklist. So there are terrific, and we can link them, not today.
Yeah, we'll put a PDF up on the show notes for this podcast that you can actually download a checklist that you can go over with your loved one, and that you can begin to say, these are the things that you can do, these are the things that you can't do. Maybe just give a couple examples, like what would be on that checklist.
So there are a couple different checklists. So one resource that we'll be able to give is just a conversation of, how do you think it's going? Hey, Aunt Sue, I'm going to say Aunt Sue lives on her own, okay? And you start going over there and you're noticing like Aunt Sue's like got a lot of mail starting to pile up. Maybe you look in her fridge, a lot of things are expired. You're starting to notice those things like, Aunt Sue's not quite shaking it the way she used to.
Yeah, right.
So you might decide to go over with some resources and say, hey, Aunt Sue, bring her favorite meal, a little hot tea, whatever. Hey, Aunt Sue, I really wanted to have a conversation with you. I just wanted to check in and see how things are going on a day-to-day basis because I'm starting to notice some things, and I just want to check in on you. Are you open to that conversation?
And that's important, because the way that you frame this, it's not just about having this conversation. It's about framing it in a way that allows it just to be an open conversation, not accusatory, not saying, I want to do this, I'm going to do this. It's just, you tell me how things are going. And then you can, it's a conversation,
and it's a
right?
permission.
Yeah.
It's permission, Greg. Permission is huge, because one of the things that's in all of the research, and we'll start to feel it as we age, society, we become invisible. And our sense of agency is shut down left and right. So maintaining a person's being intentional and being genuine about that person has agency.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to Aunt Sue and I'm going to say, hey, Aunt Sue, can we have a conversation? Because I'm starting to notice some things.
Yeah.
And as someone who loves you, I feel like I just want to check in on you.
Yeah.
Can we have that conversation? Aunt Sue may very well look at you and go, Greggy, no, I'm fine. And you say, okay, Aunt Sue, but if there's a time that changes, let me know.
Yeah.
And then at that point you might say, because I just have concerns, like, you have a lot of paper around and I worry about you tripping. And,
right.
So I wonder, sometimes when I come over, I wonder, could I pick these papers up for you? Like, are there little things that I could do? It just ratchet that down versus coming in and saying, oh, what have you got going? Oftentimes we're busy. We're busy. We've so many people.
We barge in.
Yeah. And you're caring for kids, or you're caring for teenagers or young adults who don't listen to you anyway. Wait, did I say that out loud? Where you're just like, go in, you're like, I can take control of this. So you'll throw the paper, or you'll start doing it. You see there's expired stuff in the refrigerator and you start cleaning it out, because
I don't even like that. I don't like when people touch you. Right. You don't want somebody coming into your house and like doing all these things. You want to be able to do them yourself on your pace. And so when you feel invisible already in society, when you're in your own home and you're maybe questioning what even your, I had a woman that her husband had died after 60 years of marriage. And I was giving a talk in North Carolina, and she said, I thought I didn't have a purpose anymore after my husband died. Now, the talk gave her some hope and understanding that she still had gifts to share. And she obviously was driving. She was doing things. She was getting around on her own. But mentally, she had felt that she was invisible and didn't matter. So you take that piece that people feel that way, and then we barge in. And we're like, you are invisible because now I'm doing all this stuff for you.
Right.
Maybe they just don't want to open the mail. Right. Maybe it's just like, I just don't open it. I just keep it. I'm going to go recycle it. Like, I don't even know what's wrong with it. The expired stuff. Yeah, I'm going to throw it out on Tuesday. I just didn't want to put it in the garbage because it's going to stink, whatever it might be. But it leads to other things too, right? Like you might then offer a way that I notice that you're having problems getting up. Let's go ahead and put a handle in the shower or a place that begins to safeguard.
Right.
Correct?
And that's where you can say things like, so, Aunt Sue, can we have this conversation? Or maybe you start the conversation by saying, wow, I watched this podcast on faith in real life, and this lady was talking about envelope of death and these checklists, and she said that we should start doing it now while you're alive and where we're all well and we can have jokes about it. And so I'm going to bring over a bag of potato chips.
I'm doing this, by the way. I mean, I'm going to do this in my own family. So they can either choose to watch and just start or, I mean, because it all makes sense.
Yeah. And so, then you come over and you're like, okay, we're going to just do this. And it's going to feel silly the first time we do it, but we're going to do it. And I have these checklists.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing, so there's different checklists. So one checklist is tasks of daily living, where you go through and you're like, and it's going to seem silly it may seem silly when you're talking to someone who's fully able-bodied, right?
But I'm afraid that if I see this checklist, that I might have to check off some of the things that I can't do anymore.
Amy buttons my shirts.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't make my own meals. So it's just a checklist, and it normalizes everything, and it allows the person to say, these are the things. And what I encourage people to do is like, let the person, like Aunt Sue, hey Aunt Sue, we're gonna do a little check-in game. I want you to take this. You check it off how you feel about you. And with your permission, I'm going to check it off on like what I'm thinking. And then we're going to compare notes. Right. Because maybe Aunt Sue is saying, I can keep my house. And maybe I check off like needs a little bit of help. And as long as we're framing in this, that we're on the same team and we're partners, and I want her to live how she wants to live, then we can come in and have conversations.
Well, you're also not being reactionary to the situation, to where emotions run high. And especially if there's more siblings, then decision making is really going to get out of whack very quick, because not everybody's going to agree across households. So to do it early eliminates some of the hurt or emotion-based reaction to a situation. So that I think that is key. And if you do it early enough, you can joke about the checklist. You can begin to find ways to say, I'm looking at this and you're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing.
Right.
How do we make the change so you don't fall and break a hip and then this really escalates? How do we stop that from happening? Even in ministry, people don't want to talk about preventative measures. Everybody just wants to react.
Right.
When the person is poor, we'll give them some food. When they get divorced, we'll get them counseling. We do all these things after, but to say, I want to prevent a disaster.
Right.
People don't like to buy into that.
We're not a wellness culture. We're not designed for wellness in the culture. We're designed for crisis and fix. The checklists, in terms of like, how you doing? These are things that happen, developmental milestones of being 5, 6, 7 years old look like this. Developmental milestones of being, in advanced age are going to look like this. So we're just going to start talking about them now. Then people can start to kind of think about like, oh yeah, if there was a day when I couldn't dress myself, that's when I would probably want someone to come into the home, or
And as you're saying this, I'm thinking about in people sharing this message and just talking, like, I'm thinking about the 20-year-old who has a single mom, where you would never think about having a conversation with a 45-year-old woman about this when you're 20 years old, but yet something medically does happen. And at 20, I wouldn't have known what to do. I'm not even in touch with all of this stuff, and a lot of information is going to come at me very quickly. So the earlier we write down these things,
the earlier we check it off. The
Yeah.
other thing is that checklist. Part of my work has been in healthcare as well.
Yeah.
I'm not clinical, but I've been in process management. I've been a patient navigator, like linking people up to resources. And, that checklist is also helpful because that's something you go to your provider with. And now suddenly you're able to say, okay, Aunt Sue's not able to do these things. Provider, what's available?
Right.
Because sometimes the providers don't know in the office. It doesn't come up. It hasn't come up. And there may be tools. There may be a social worker within the system they can connect you to. My mom has a terrific pharmacist who reviews her medication. I think we usually go quarterly.
Okay.
And he reviews, and it's his job to make sure that none of the medicines that she's taking has a bad side effect with another medication. That happens with people on medications all the time.
Yeah.
And so having these checklists, talking about these things is vulnerable. We have our iconic images of what we think things should look like. And
Right.
it can be hard to look at our reality and say, I don't have as much in the bank as I thought I would be.
Yeah.
I would have, I am on my own and I thought I would have a partner at this point in my life. Whatever those things are, it's vulnerable and it's scary. The checklist is able to say, like, everybody poops. Let's look at it and see what we're going to do. And then that becomes a tool to talk to providers.
Well, and that was one thing that I wanted to say, like, what is something that people don't realize about being a caregiver for a parent that they really should start to know now? I mean, I think that we're setting it up that these are the things, but for those people who are just getting into it, and they aren't 100% sure of what they've moved through the different linear phases. They're maybe on the fourth one, and they're really implemented into this, and they've started to modify their own life in order to take care of a parent or a loved one in some way. What is it that they have to start giving themselves grace on in the beginning that allows this process to move forward naturally?
There's a couple things that come to mind. The first thing that comes to mind, though, is that you may not be the person.
That's a self-check.
You may not be the person that's able to serve that need. You may not be the person because the person who needs help isn't letting you, and you have to respect that choice. You may not be the person, and it's okay not to be the person. It's okay not to be the person. We joke. My husband was an only child, so it was a little different for him. But with my sisters and I, we joke because my parents gave us each a nickname. I'm Mary Poppins. So I'm like the administrator. I have my
the nanny of the family.
Yeah, I'm like the big person. It seems like I always have like a little resource, a checklist, a tool, like, call Mary Poppins. And
Right. Keep reaching in the bag.
One of my sisters is Nurse Ratchet because she is like, when someone doesn't want to do their PT, she is going to be over there going, "This hurts, move your leg." And then another person in the family is Florence Nightingale because she's like fluffs the pillow and she'll be the super soft nurse, like whenever. So sometimes you got to play into like, what are these roles? What are you good at? What are you not good at? What feels right?
I mean, there would be things that I couldn't do. Mm-hmm. I mean, like mentally or physically, that I wouldn't be the right person for certain things. Just as somebody who overreacts is not the right person to be making decisions, with the doctor immediately. If
Right.
Sid, I mean, I think that's great advice. I mean, to know, number one, that you may not be the person.
You might not be the person, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it will be okay.
Yeah.
It will be okay. I mean, I've had friends who've needed to do long distance caregiving who, they live on the East Coast and their parents have retired to a warmer state or out west or things like that. And geographically, they cannot be the person, And so tools that they've used is they've connected with social workers within the healthcare system, gotten referrals for geriatric health workers that will help you, that will actually be your liaison with your parent who lives out of state. So there are resources out there, but I think in order to even look up and say, what are the resources, we have to get away from the shame and the guilt that it's not us.
Right. So that first phase of accepting this is to have an open mindset that it's like a wave almost, that it's going to do what it wants to do, and we have to be able to ride it, or we need to be able to find the person that can help our loved one ride it.
Or sometimes the only thing we can do is to put the resource in front of the person we care about and say, it's yours. You can call the number or not.
Right.
What I'd also like to share with you, Greg, is in addition to that chart of helping, involved, intensive, all-encompassing, and closing, is I want to talk about there's other language to talk about it. Okay. So when we look at this next slide, which I'm hoping you'll be able to show folks, is caregiver of tomorrow. So that 20-year-old you were talking about,
yeah,
caregiver of tomorrow, right? If I'm going into my parents who live on their own and they're relatively healthy, and I want to say, hey, Aunt Sue, or hey, Mom and Dad, I want to do this checklist with you. I'm thinking about myself as caregiver of tomorrow. What do I need?
Yeah.
Then there's caregiver during crisis, which is when the 20-year-old and they have a 40-year-old parent and suddenly there's been some sort of a medical emergency that's left a parent incapacitated. Or a husband and a wife, you know, we're fine. And then someone's sick and I become a caregiver during crisis. Then caregiver in transition is when we're in relationship with someone who they themselves are transitioning from able-bodied to greater disabilities. So we're transitioning. That's when Mom and Dad are staying at home, but they need some outside help, all of those things. Caregiver as routine is, it's a part of my life, and I'm going to either hire people, or this may be time when I start taking FMLA from my job because I need to be present to this caregiving need. So it's consistent. And that's when you had talked about a friend of yours who said when her husband died, I didn't know what to do after his caregiving was gone.
Yeah.
So this is oftentimes when we become caregiver as routine, it can become part of our identity. Mm-hmm. And we really, throughout all of these stages, we should be mindful of burnout, but particularly during crisis and during caregiver as routine, we have to think about burnout.
Because I think the statistics are like 60% of caregivers have like a high emotional stress, and like 40% say that they have depression from what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
Yeah. And it's something like 20 hours a week is the national average of a caregiver who's not being paid. They're just a family member, and they're maybe working full time and then going and being caregiver and on shifts and rotations with other people. So burnout becomes very real. Like, this is not the life I planned. This is not what I expected to be doing now that my kids are gone and I'm an empty nester. Now I'm starting this all over again, right? So you can go down a very ugly path of self-loathing, even being angry at the person that you're taking care of.
Right. And neglecting your own care. So when you're managing multiple doctor's appointments for other people, it can be very easy to let your own mammogram slip. It can be very easy to, maybe you're having like digestive issues and you're like, oh, that's just stress, instead of going to the doctor and finding out what's going on with my stomach, or am I sleeping? You and I, you know my history. Like that question, am I sleeping?
Yeah.
Is huge.
Something so basic. Am I eating? Am I drinking enough water? Like all of these things. And so then this team mindset begins to kick in for me. Like, if you have a loved one who's a caregiver, are you helping then be a bit of a caregiver for your loved one who's in that role, where just making sure eating, sleeping, drinking, okay, hug, like,
right. Get back to the basics.
Yeah. Like this is humanity. This is the core development of what we need as people, in order to exist.
Right.
And otherwise we begin to lose that identity, like you said. And if we don't know our purpose, we don't know our identity, or we wrap it up into something else that's not reality, then there's going to be even a bigger issue when time's done.
Well, and then that leads us to our last, caregiver at exit. So caregiver at exit is when the person has passed. So unlike closing before.
Unlike closing, where they're better and right. Now they can do horseback riding again, this is death.
This is caregiver at exit.
You're opening the envelope.
You're opening the envelope. You're making the funeral arrangements. You're cleaning out the house after someone has passed. You're going through all those things. And I think that this chart is something I would love if pastoral teams would look at. Because I think these two slides, the helping, going from helping to closing, and then this one, caregiver of tomorrow, caregiver at exit. I think those are the two places where, as communities of faith, people can help one another. Even just being able to identify what stage you're at, where you're at, because these, you can expect some things, and you will be able to help each other with prayer resources, concrete resources, like here's the checklist. Here's your protections for FMLA. Like the I have a slide in here, I'm not going to show it, but the rate of caregivers who lose their jobs because of their dual role as caregiver is astounding in this country.
Really?
And oftentimes workplaces don't do enough to let their employees know what is available to them in terms of what they can do during a caregiving crisis. If you've got long-term care issues, like you have to, and so these are things that.
This is just real life.
This is life. This is life. Life is lifey. And so a faith community, it's, hope and prayers, right? Like, oh, I'll pray for you.
Yeah.
I heard your mom was sick. I'm going to pray for you. That's great. And I will never say that prayer is a beautiful thing.
Right.
And it's real. And at the same time, people need real help. Well, people need more than just the meal train.
So I do want to put God into it in this moment, because what you're saying is very true. One of the people that I've been fortunate enough to work with is a hospital chaplain, just in spiritual direction, spiritual guidance. And in talking to them, one of the questions that I asked was, when was the last time that you sat at the bedside of an incapacitated individual and just read them scripture, or told them that they were loved, or told them that God was with them, and things like that? Because it's kind of not just saying, oh, I prayed for that person today. And so we had this conversation, and a couple of months later, they came back to me and they said, the family of someone that I was sitting by reading scripture to saw me. And it meant so much knowing that their dad would love that. And that became the living image of Christ, right? We took it from thoughts and prayers, which people now criticize. Don't get rid of it, keep it, but let's put it into motion. But to living the Beatitudes within this realm of caregiving, right? Not forgetting what God calls us to do. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. What does that look like? What does it look like to be able to do that in caregiving? Carrying our own cross. There's so many aspects of Scripture, so many aspects of tradition that communities forget about when it comes time to being the hands and feet of Christ for somebody who's suffering from burnout as a caregiver. And a lot of them are there every week. I always refer to them as the slow leak. They're the people that their tire is losing air, but nobody notices because it's just a nail in the tire.
Right.
And every day it's losing more and more air, but nobody notices.
And the person doesn't notice.
No.
They don't notice.
Until one day you're 150 miles away from home and the tire finally goes out and now you have a flat. And if you're not prepared, you destroy the rim and it can cause an accident and a lot of other things. Right. When all it would have taken was a little bit of time to plug the slow leak. And that's kind of how we work as people, especially those who are burnt out in a situation, that by somebody coming into our world and journeying with us, rather than just telling us that they got our back in prayer. I think people are, it can become a throwaway line anymore. Like,
yeah, and
I just want to be real about it.
Neither of us are saying like it's disingenuous or that the people aren't really praying. Neither of us are saying that.
No.
But what we're also, I think, encouraging is that we can normalize this because it's life and it's normal, and we can talk about it, and together we can do things about it.
Because if we're not doing, then we become numb to it.
We can become isolated. And what I like about these two frameworks to think about things is that the reality is, at least for in the U.S., another thing to keep in mind is that more people are aging. They're only 5% of people of advanced age will go to a nursing home. A lot of people are now aging alone. That is different than previous times. Because previous times, remember I talked about my intergenerational, multi-generational family. In the past, oftentimes grandparents lived in the same homes. Some of that was because of financial need, like the family needed to live together. People couldn't afford to have other homes. They couldn't afford to have an apartment here and an apartment, someone live in this apartment, grandma's in an apartment and we're over here in our apartment. People couldn't afford that. They would be together.
Yeah.
Also, a lot more folks are divorced or never married, those things. So when I think about our faith, our communities of faith, this is the opportunity. Because when we think about one of the resources I have is who's on your caregiving team. And for some folks, maybe I don't have a son or daughter. Maybe I don't have a niece or nephew that I'm close to. So it may end up being someone in my neighborhood, a community. More and more people older people are choosing to have intentional community of I forget what they're called, but just women in their 60s buying houses and moving in, because they're just going to age. It's the Golden Girls. That's what it's the Golden Girls. There are more and more There's even a website where you can get connected with how to form your own Golden Girl community and where are Golden Girl communities around you.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I think about living out in the country, and my neighbor, his son lives in another state, and he's up there in age and he goes out and he does his stuff. But every once in a while, when two people have 25 acres each. You don't see these people all the time. And to check in on them, I'll just text them. How you doing? Like, need anything? Or sometimes I just take him stuff just to check on him. So like, hey, we made extra dinner tonight. Yeah, I'm giving him food because I care, but I'm also letting him know, A, somebody cares, but B, how does he look? How's he doing? Like,
Right.
because we intervene. And
And the other side of that is, remember when your kids were little and they'd have friends and you'd be friends with the other parents, and so you would have, like, if Nathan had a friend over and Johnny fell, you would know the number to call because you had Johnny's mom or dad in your phone and be like, hey, Johnny fell. The other side of that is, check in on your neighbors, but then also, if something happens, do you happen to know the number of his son to call him and be like, hey, Johnny, your dad fell? You know,
I'm going to ask him if he's got an envelope of death.
Yeah.
That would be a great conversation to start with your neighbor.
A great.
He'll never let me in again.
No.
But I do want to go back to, as we're talking about stress, and starting to feel the burden, right? So how does a caregiver see this as part of their purpose and not a burden during the season of caregiving? Like, we want them to take care of themselves, but how do they find purpose in helping take care of somebody they love rather than just seeing it as a burden?
I think sometimes I'd even just kind of back up and say, what are the assumptions under the question, right? Like, sometimes I think I think you have to be careful, because if you're feeling burdened, weighed down, your heart is heavy, you're tired at the end of a day, those are all normal responses to caregiving. I mean, if you're lifting someone and washing someone and dressing someone and calling on prescriptions, and I mean, you're doing all of that.
Another part-time job.
And maybe a part-time job, and then you got to go and you got to do your own bills, or you got to pick your kid up from school. Like, that's real.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling that, you need a system of support.
Yeah.
You got to go back to the basics. And what's my system of support?
And there does come a time when I think that our faith becomes important in the journey to be able to pause, because, like you said, there are very real feelings and emotions and physical realities that occur when you're taking care of somebody. But then in looking at it and not becoming bitter about it or not resenting the person, I think that this is where the relationship of faith for a believer makes that, I don't want to say, I'm never going to say easier, I'm just going to say more understandable, that my purpose in this is not to do everything perfectly.
Right.
To understand that I might feel bitter at time to time that this is happening. But my purpose in this is to provide something. So like I said before, there are things that I cannot do to physically take care of one of my parents or somebody that's older. There's just things that I would struggle doing. I won't say never. But
you will be surprised, though, at what you can learn.
But out of all my siblings, there are gifts that I have to be able to contribute.
Right.
And that becomes my purpose. So I do think that as you talk about the support side, right, that when these people have this feeling of burden and then being able to have a support system, it's recognizing that they may come from your faith community, they may come from your nuclear family, whatever they come from.
They may come from a mental health counselor. I mean, there are caregiver support groups. There are virtual support groups too, because time is hard and not everyone can get to a support group. But getting into a caregiver support. I know there's like really great caregiver support groups for people with dementia, who are caring for people with dementia, or people who are caring for people with Parkinson's or ALS. So sometimes you have to go to like, what's the cause? What's the health challenge your family is dealing with, and find supports around that. Sometimes it's just calling up a friend who can listen to you. Sometimes it's going to a counselor and figuring out maybe what are some unhealthy habits, because you can't recognize the dysfunction while you're in the dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
So you need someone to help pull you out of it. And then I think back to, as you were talking about purpose, Greg, and what is the purpose of caring for someone? I think the purpose of being in relationship with someone who has needs, and we all have needs, right? But in this special caregiving relationship is the purpose. Sometimes our only purpose is to witness and companion and just do the next right thing.
Yeah.
And I think about examples from Scripture. I think about the women who anointed Jesus's body as it was laid in the tomb. What was their purpose?
Yeah.
He was dead. Did he need to smell good? No. They were honoring their religious tradition, so that was part of the purpose. But I think in those final moments, if I come to that with like a scriptural imagination and I think about myself, like their purpose in that moment is to just hold fast to that body for a little bit longer, right? To anoint it.
And the manner they do it in.
And the manner that they do it in, but to like honor that and see it and be present to the vessel, the fleshy vessel that held Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think as we are traveling our own fleshy vessels,
Yeah.
whether like I'm healthy right now, and so I'm able to shower and get dressed and feed myself, and sometimes when I'm feeling really great, I'm smart enough to make good health decisions in terms of diet and exercise. But as I travel through my own fleshy vessel and I know it's gonna fall apart, it just like, oh, I got to witness that.
Yeah.
Got to be present to it. I have a good friend who recently got a diagnosis of a neurological condition that will eventually paralyze them. And they're healthy now. It was a devastating diagnosis. Painful to get, painful to receive, painful to think about. And yet he's someone who loves roller coasters. And so he's also started to embrace, and in his prayer, he's just going to Jesus going, take me on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
So I guess the best thing we can do, the purpose we can find, is the same at any other time in life. Like, be present, witness, hold that experience as profoundly sacred.
It goes back to the original tagline of the ministry of, let me be. Let me be who you created me to be in this moment. Let me be nothing more. Don't let me get in the way. Don't let me create my own ideas. Just as the Lord said, be who I created you to be, and everything that you desire will be yours. Mm-hmm. And when these situations happen, we can't change them.
Right.
We can only live within them in this continuum of our day-to-day life, and faith becomes vital in order to handle it with grace. Mm-hmm. We receive that grace, but that outward sign of grace. But to get the help, to even as a caregiver, because we've talked about how we recognize for those we need, but the stress, the reality, the brokenness of what the caregiver is experiencing is very real and something to not be ashamed about.
Right. And systems can be designed to be working against that,
Yeah. And then that cycle is going to begin again for somebody who's then going to need to care for you if you let it get too far. So I think we've kind of explored this whole aspect of the beautiful camaraderie and team aspect that can be set up to be a proper caregiver, to not be embarrassed about having these conversations, to if we are the one that needs to receive the care, to know that this is just who we are in this moment, and let's make the most of it by acknowledging what is real and what is not, how we feel. And let's cry it out if we need to. Let's be angry about it for a moment. Let's do whatever we need to do. But then let's do it the best way that we possibly can. And then that reality becomes that when we're in the midst of it, there's going to be different moments that cause us to feel certain ways, to cause us to feel burned out, to cause us to feel overwhelmed. And we have to be able to recognize that too. And so I guess my last question for you on this, because we can do this. And,
I know, there's too much.
I mean, there's so much that we can talk about. And you and I have been working on a workshop for a little while on this. And I think this is going to be a jumping off spot to be able to do it, because I would love to be able to share that with the people listening today. But the question that I would ask you, like, if you were sitting across from every caregiver that's listening today, what would you want them to know in their hardest moments?
I'm going to say some things that were helpful, that have been helpful to me. One is, you didn't cause the condition. You, as a caregiver, did not cause the condition for which your loved one requires care right now. And they might not have either. More times than they probably hadn't, but sometimes there are life issues. If you're caring for someone who's, been hard on their body, it can be hard to, but caregiver, I would say, you have not caused the condition. So the condition is caused by a human body, is temporary.
Yeah.
So you didn't cause it. You don't control it. And the last thing I would say is, I'm thinking, you didn't cause it. That was important to me because, you didn't cause it. You can't control it. And you're not the person in the bed. When I've been beside the people who I love, who are no longer able to get out of bed, it can be hard for me to leave their bedside and drive my car into a sunny day. Because somehow I think like, oh, it's not fair.
Right.
They can't get out of bed. But the truth of the matter is, I will have a time when it's my time to be in the bed.
Yeah.
So I can't be there yet. I can't be in the bed. I can be beside the bed, but I cannot be in the bed yet. Yeah. Because if I'm in the bed with them, I am not living my life. And that's not in a selfish way, but however God imagined Margaret to show up, I'm not going to be able to show up because it's not my time to be in the bed. I had a conversation with my dad probably about 2 years ago. So as I mentioned before, my dad's about to be 90. And he had a lot of back issues recently. And he had a pretty significant back surgery at 87 years old.
Wow.
I mean, it was the fact that my dad's relatively healthy. I mean, he's a healthy guy, or else I wouldn't have done the surgery. But he wasn't able to get up on ladders anymore and do the things that, which is very hard to do for a Teamster man to just sit down. But I guess when my sisters and I were shifting from helping to being more involved, and I don't know that we're even at intensive yet, but from helping to be more involved, oftentimes my dad would say things like, "Oh, I just don't want to be a burden. I hate to ask these things of you. I wish I could do this myself, da, 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 da." And it was coming from a good place. But what I told him, I realized it one day when I was at my driving home, and I went back to him and I said, "Look, Dad," I said, "someday I am going to be 90. I hope and pray someday I get to be 90.
Yeah.
And there will be a time when I have to let go of these things. I have to stop going on ladders. I have to do it. And it's going to be hard for me to let go of those things. I can't do it twice. I can't do the work of that twice. So every time you tell me, oh, I don't want to be a burden, or, oh, I wish I could do that, like, you're making me let go of it now. Like, you're 90. And all I can do is say, this is your experience of 90, and you may not like to be a burden, but you have to do the work to get over that and accept that reality now for you. And when I'm 90, I'm going to have to do it for me, but we can't keep having this same conversation of guilt and shame and guilt and shame and guilt and shame.
Right. And I think that that's, starts with, even looking at what the results are of your checklist and what's happening, and looking at that and just facts are facts. It's kind of like if you're an accountant, the numbers don't lie, right? They just are what they are. Nobody made them up. They're just there. And that's how life works sometimes. And people that I've experienced, that are struggling, they want to be seen, they want to be heard. And I would tell somebody that's watching that is really struggling in like your hardest moment as a caregiver that you are enough, that you have to know that you have to know that if your heart is there in it, that whatever you're doing, that you are enough. And no matter what resources you get, no matter how many books you read, no matter how many podcasts you listen to, there are going to be things that are just going to hit you like a ton of bricks. And there's going to be roads that you have to go down that you never thought you could imagine going down. And that is when just give yourself a breath of grace and say, I am enough. And know that so many people wouldn't get in the trenches, and so many people wouldn't get involved. And many people have left loved ones to fend for themselves because they weren't brave enough to either ask the questions or to do the work. And so each of us need to remember that we're all just going to do our best, but there are ways to set ourselves up for success and to make it easier. So, if you've enjoyed this podcast, I really want you to share it with somebody that you love or somebody that needs it. Or maybe there's a section of it that just pertains to you or someone that you know, and just tell them, say, hey, start at this minute mark and just listen to these 5 minutes, because we've covered some ground, but it's just an introduction to let you know that these things are going to happen. They're just the cycle of life. Mm-hmm. They're not going to happen when we expect. And at times we're going to be overwhelmed by them. And we need to know that our mental health is important. And B, we have to rely on our faith to lift us up when none of it makes sense at all. And so that's what we do together. Now, I'm going to ask you to like this podcast. I'm going to ask you to share it. If you like the message and you want more, you can always go to our audio and video section on faithandreallife.com or listen anywhere where podcasts are available. But we're always here to walk with you as a ministry and to help guide you through this intersection of faith and real life, not because we have to, but because we care about you and we want to remind you that God is in all of it. He's in the stuff. He's in the messy. He's in the ugly, and he's in the unknown. And that's where he's asking you to give it all over to him. So thank you for being part of that. And Margaret, I can't thank you enough for not only sharing like your wisdom and your research, but that you share your heart. And that when you tell your stories, that they come from a place of tenderness that says, I know what I've experienced and I know what other people have gone through. And I don't want someone else to feel a negativity that they don't have to if it's not necessary. So I always like to give my guests the final comment in all of it. But what would you like to just leave us all with as we walk out, knowing that caregiving is a beautiful thing in our lives when we're called into it, but that also that we can have honest conversations and it's okay.
Yep. Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank you, Greg and Amy, for just keeping the house open. And I would just say perfection is never the measure, because there's no way I'd be sitting here. And just enjoy being human.
Yeah.
Just enjoy being human. Enjoy the days that life feels good, and know that on the days that life doesn't feel good, that too passes.
Amen. Well, if you would like to create your own envelope of death, you now know how to create one. But in all seriousness, God loves you. God sees you. He hears your prayers. And he's always looking for a way to get into the places that we haven't allowed him into. So as you go throughout your week, as you go out throughout this journey as a caregiver, just know that you're not alone in this and that God has your back. God keep you, God bless you. And until we meet again, I hope that he meets you everywhere that you desire him.